Hi everyone! Today we're diving into the passionate and expressive world of Romantic period music, which spanned roughly from 1830 to 1900. This period saw music becoming more personal, emotional, and reflective of the broader cultural, political, and philosophical shifts of the 19th century. The Romantic period continued and expanded all of the developments from the previous period. With the French Revolution's repercussions continuing, middle class steadfastly rose along with nationalism in all European countries. Music education spread in all classes, along with public concerts for all. It was deeply influenced by the Industrial Revolution, political revolutions in Europe, and Romanticism, Realism, Exoticism, and Nationalism were focal movements in art. Think of novels such as Frankenstein, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Les Miserables, Madame Bovary, and Tom Sawyer, and their themes of emotion and individualism, of underspoken people of society, and stark realities of human problems. Composers now saw themselves as artistic geniuses, not just servants of church or court. Music became a medium for self-expression, storytelling, and emotional exploration. Romantic music took many of the classical forms, like the symphony, sonata, and concerto, but expanded them. Emotion and expression became greater in dramatic contrasts, richer with adventurous harmonies and lyrical melodies. Rubato practice abounded with greater flexibility and tempo, giving performers more expressive freedom. There was greater chromaticism with more daring modulations, not just to a neighboring key area. Expanded orchestras made up of bigger ensembles and new instruments, such as tuba and celesta, offered richer textures. We will study more in detail how these characteristics manifested in various representative works of this period. Old genres such as symphonies, concertos, string quartets, and program music continued, but with greater variety and expansions. Symphony especially grew in size and emotional depth, as we will see in works of Brahms and Tchaikovsky. Concertos became more virtuosic and dramatic, such as the works of Chopin, Paganini, and Mendelssohn, as instruments developed to be able to express wider spectrums of tone colors, ranges, and techniques. New genres such as character pieces for piano and tone poems or symphonic poems developed in this period. Character pieces are short, expressive works for solo piano, such as Schumann's Kindersingen or Chopin's Nocturnes. And tone poems are one-movement orchestral pieces that tell a story or paints a scene, such as Liszt's Les Préludes. For vocal music, Italian operas continued to dominate the scenes, but other schools were developed in Germany by composers such as Weber and Wagner, and in France by Meyerbeer and Bizet. Art songs became another main vocal genre of this period. An art song, Lied in German, was a setting of poetry for piano and voice, deeply emotional in its character. Schubert's Erlkönig or Earl King and Schumann's Dichterliebe are such works. Composers still wrote cantatas and oratorios, but popularity of operas and art songs overshadowed these genres. A key debate of the Romantic era centered around whether to preserve classical forms or push musical boundaries. Traditionalists like Johannes Brahms respected classical forms but infused them with romantic expressiveness. He favored absolute music, that is, music for music's sake, without programmatic storytelling. Others in this school included Franz Schubert, who wrote 500-plus art songs, along with symphonies, piano, and chamber works, Felix Mendelssohn, who revived J.S. Bach's music, his sister Fanny Mendelssohn, Robert Schumann, and his wife Clara Schumann, who both were close friends to Brahms. Revolutionaries like Franz Liszt and Richard Wagner broke away from tradition. Wagner created the music drama, blending music and narrative into a total work of art called called Gesamtkunstwerk in German, and Liszt pioneered the tone poem, blending music and literature. Hector Berlioz also expanded programmatic music in the largest symphonic work by this period in history, with Symphonie Fantastique, a 5-movement symphony that weaved his personal love story directly. The debate between absolute and programmatic music shaped the direction of Western music for generations to come, eventually leading to further diversity of idealisms such as Impressionism, Expressionism, and many other isms, as we will see in the music of 20th century and beyond. Also prevalent in this period was nationalism, and many composers wrote music that explicitly represented their countries. Chopin, who almost exclusively wrote for piano, wrote many works that reflect his Polish heritage. Bedřich Smetana and Antonin Dvorak both wrote works that honor Bohemian cultures and sentiment. Tchaikovsky, along with many Russian composers, wrote works that carried or expressed Slavic sound, and America was also rising in its national identity, represented with composers such as Sousa. Let's explore the music of the Romantic period, starting with an example of an art song. The following is Erlkönig by Franz Schubert. The song is an iconic example of the art song genre. The song is set to the poem by the same name by the famous German poet Wolfgang Goethe, whose later years overlapped with Schubert's. The poem was written much earlier, 1782, and many composers set music to this poem, which tells of a son hunted by a demonic spirit, Erlkönig, from whom the father tries to assist the son to escape. Despite the effort, the son dies at the end of the poem. Schubert's setting captures one voice playing all 4 roles: narrator, father, son, and the Erlkönig, and the drama is depicted vividly through many different ways. Chromatic harmony with many dissonances expresses distressed emotion of the storytelling, while the piano accompaniment also partakes in word painting, most evidently heard in the running horse motif heard in the fast repeated octaves. Aside from the popular art songs of this period, old forms still continued, but with greater depth and expansion. The example from the Oratorio Elijah by Mendelssohn, who represented the traditional school of composers in this period, is demonstrative of both conservation and expansion. You can see that the traditional forms of recitative, chorus, and aria are retained in the examples of O Thou Who Makest, The Fire Descends, and Is Not His Word Like a Fire, respectively representing the forms, along with melismatic and virtuosic singing. You can also hear the expanded orchestra and more complex harmonies with increased chromatic movements and dissonant harmonies. For instrumental genres, all of the old ones continued, including symphonies, concertos, and chamber music. We will examine the symphonic genres in another context shortly, but first we will explore an example of chamber music from this period. The featured piece is by a woman composer, Fanny Mendelssohn, the older sister of the more famous brother, Felix Mendelssohn. Women composers were largely marginalized in this period, though judging by the greater availability of records from this period when compared to the previous musical eras, the number of women composers and musicians finding their voices and recognition increased steadily, even with the challenging societal climates. One of the significant new genres from this period is the character piece. Piano's popularity continued from the classical period, and the Romantic era can be considered as the golden age of piano literature. Character pieces of varying kinds dominated the repertoire, along with old forms such as sonatas, variations, and rondos from the previous period. Chiarina and Chopin are 2 short character pieces taken out of the bigger work Carnival, which contained 19 other short character pieces. Each movement depicted a different character. Chiarina depicted Clara Schumann, the composer's wife, and Chopin, a colleague whom Schumann admired. Another popular character piece was Ballade, and the example we will hear is by Clara Schumann. You can hear much rubato in performance, a manipulation of timing prevalent in Romantic period's performance practice. The work reflects much influence of the more famous ballades by Chopin, where great virtuosity is shown through highly embellished writing, along with great dramaticism, and heroic narrative is spun out through lengthier form. Chopin almost exclusively wrote for piano, and through his piano works, one gains insight into the diverse and virtuosic writing of the piano character pieces of this period. As mentioned before, his ballades represent the extensive large forms that he had developed during this period, a set of staples that all serious pianists must know. He also wrote many short forms, mazurkas being an example. Mazurka is a Polish dance, and Chopin adapted the music into solo piano repertoire. Shorter and more accessible in writing, the mazurkas are great pedagogic materials. Liszt, a frenemy of Chopin, is another pivotal figure in the development of piano literature from this period. He took piano performance to another level of virtuosity and became arguably the first international star of the instrument, unprecedented in fame and prestige. Though well-versed in the old forms as well, he was friends with the progressive composers such as Wagner on the opposite side of the traditionalists. He is credited for creating the genre symphonic poem or a tone poem, a one-movement work that depicts narrative of a poem. He also wrote works that reflect his Hungarian heritage, exemplified in works such as the Hungarian Rhapsodies, written for both solo piano and orchestras. The example given is from number 2, the famous last movement of the work, demonstrating great virtuosity along with exoticism and nationalism. Program music continued to expand, best exemplified in the symphonic work of Berlioz' Symphonie Fantastique. The symphony consists of 5 different movements, each with a descriptive title. The entire symphony lasts about an hour, and the work incorporates an idée fixe, a fixed idea or theme that recurs throughout the work. The symphony is accompanied with a program note written by the composer, a semi-autobiography that recaps varying scenes of the artist suffering from an unrequited love. The composer is said to have written the work after falling in love with a Shakespearean actress, Harriet Smithson, who later becomes his wife. The marriage ended in divorce, as if to fulfill the disastrous ending foretold in the symphony. Aside from the fascinating story and background surrounding the symphony, it is also a great example of Berlioz's contribution to development in orchestration, where varying instrumental techniques and combinations brought to life vivid storytelling and characters. On the other side of the progressive trends manifested in various programmatic music, the traditionalists championed absolute music. Composers such as Johannes Brahms wrote music for music's sake without any associations to specific stories or programs. They often adopted traditional forms and genres for their works, reflecting influences of the old masters such as J.S. Bach, Handel, Beethoven, Haydn, and Mozart. The Movement 3 from Symphony No. 1 by Brahms demonstrates such practice. It is an ABA dance form typical in classical symphonies. The changes between sections are clearly heard in the changing meters, A in simple duple and B in compound duple. At the return of A, motif from B is skillfully weaved into the A to offer variation. During the Romantic period, nationalism sprung in many countries. Several composers from what is now Czech Republic, Russia, and also in American continents wrote works with traditional and original folk melodies, offering art music beyond the German, French, and Italian establishments. Bedřich Smetana was a pianist and composer who, along with Dvorak, is considered as a co-founder of the Czech National School. In his works, he incorporated Czech traditional dance forms and patriotic themes, yielding lasting masterworks such as The Battered Bride, a comic opera, and My Country, 6 symphonic poems on Bohemian landscapes and themes. Antonin Dvorak was a violinist and composer who also represented Czech, but who also worked extensively in America, adopting American folk music of both African and Native American influences, and impacting subsequent generation of American composers such as Copland and Gershwin. Here is one of the most memorable melodies from his Symphony No. 9, the second movement's theme, a melody likened to a spiritual or a Czech folk tune. Several composers from Russia rose to distinction during the Romantic period, Tchaikovsky arguably being the most famous one. His music definitely reflected nationalism with many references to Russian musical heritage, but at the same time, his work showed influences of the traditional German school, Italian opera, and French ballet music. His personal life is as all-encompassing as his music, marked with all kinds of unforeseen, including death of his mother at a young age, an ensued battle with depression, late recommence and music career at the age of 23, a brief marriage that resulted in disastrous divorce, and a mysterious patron who supported his music without ever meeting him, to name just a few. His music captures deep emotions, drama, and imaginations, undoubtedly repercussioned from such vicissitudes of life. The 1812 overture, written to celebrate the anniversary of Russia's victory over France in 1812, is a great example that captures the patriotism and vivid dramaticism in Tchaikovsky's music. The orchestration included cannons to capture the real artillery sound. In America, 19th century was a time of great diversity, with music reflecting both European traditions and uniquely American forms. Among many emerging genres and forms, band music, particularly brass bands, experienced a surge in popularity, becoming a significant part of social and cultural life. These bands, often associated with military traditions, played a vital role in civic celebrations, parades, and even outdoor concerts. The golden age of professional bands emerged, with John Philip Sousa becoming a prominent composer and band leader. Sousa, aside from his thriving works still heard today, such as The Stars and Stripes Forever, was a prolific writer who also contributed to music education for all children. Sousa, who once ran away to join a circus at the age of 13, must have appreciated the impact of music education that he received when his father placed him in the U.S. Marine Band, changing the course of his life as a lasting legend in America. These examples are but a few starting samples that demonstrate the richness of emotional depth, individualism, and innovation of the Romantic period. Whether through the sweeping melodies of Tchaikovsky, the poetic piano works of Chopin, or the powerful operas of Verdi and Wagner, Romantic composers sought to connect with audiences on a deeply human level. And in many ways, the Romantic era set the stage for all modern music by exploring what music can explore, continuing to enlarge its boundaries throughout the subsequent centuries, as we will see in the next module.